Hi everyone, my name's Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer, and I thought I would start a new themed reading vlog today. I asked on Instagram which reading vlog you would like me to do because I have several in mind, or had several in mind, and I will be doing all of these over the course of the next few months, but I wanted to ask which one you wanted to see first, and it was so close. I couldn't believe how close it was. There were only a couple of votes between each one. So I asked if you wanted me to do a reading vlog reading new crime books, or if you wanted me to do a reading vlog where I read books that contain some of my favourite themes, or if you wanted me to do a reading vlog where I read some Persephone classics, because I have a few unread ones sitting on my shelves over there. And you voted for a vlog where I read books containing some of my favourite themes. So that is what we're going to be doing today. There are several things that I love in books, but something I've been thinking about recently and have mentioned in hauls because I've been seeking books out that contain this: dinner parties. Now, less specifically books that somehow revolve around gathering and having food in perhaps a more formal setting. It's kind of that juxtaposition of people coming together to talk, but they're in an environment where maybe they don't know the people that well, or there's some kind of social etiquette, which means they are holding things back. And then maybe you get scenes where they're talking to people they're closer to, say washing up dishes in the kitchen, and you get a bit of insight into their lives. And then again, they put on a front to go back to have dinner. That kind of thing. I don't know why I like that. I just do. And there are a few books that I can think of that really showcase that for me. So a book that I really loved many years ago was There But For There by Ali Smith, which near the beginning has a dinner party where a couple invite their friend to come, and they bring along somebody else who everyone's never met before, this guy called Miles, and the other people are a bit annoyed that he's invited someone, or she has invited someone. I can't remember, it's been a long time, but they're annoyed that this other person they don't know has been invited, and they're trying to make them feel comfortable. But then Miles gets up from the table and goes and locks himself in the bathroom, and he refuses to leave for weeks, or maybe it's a bedroom. He locks himself in the house and he refuses to leave, and then it becomes this big scandal, and it's just wonderful. Ali Smith in general is wonderful. The way that she writes conversations is fantastic. All of the subtle jibes and unspoken things, and all the political themes that she weaves into her writing as well. It's great. I also love Nikki French for this. I love them for other reasons too, but one of the things that they do brilliantly is dinner parties and gatherings of people, which is wonderful in crime thrillers because it means you always have a large host of people to suspect, and you can see how they interact with people that they both know and don't know at these gatherings. So The Memory Game was one of the first standalones of theirs that I read that had that. So did The Lying Room, which was the very first book of theirs that I read, and I just love that. More recently, I read At the Table by Claire Powell. I actually listened to this one on audiobook because it's narrated by Kristen Atherton. That was the reason that I started listening to it, because she'd narrated an audiobook that I'd loved before, and I just wanted to listen to something else that she was reading aloud. And this was a really fantastic book. It followed a family, and at least for the majority of the book, we only saw the family when they met up for, say, Sunday lunch, and you would be able to fill in the gaps between these meetings as they talked around the table. And I thought that that was very effective too. So I have 4 books that I've pulled from my shelves that relate to either dinner parties or food and eating and gathering of people in some way. They do all this in very different ways, which I thought would be good for a reading vlog, because I don't want to be reading exactly the same things over and over again. So the one that probably epitomizes it the most is this, which is Dinner Party by Sarah Gilmartin. This is about Kate, who says she's been doing things right. To mark an important anniversary, she plans an exquisite dinner for her family, but by the end of the dinner, everything has gone disastrously wrong. Then we have this. This is Weasels in the Attic by Hiroko Oyamada. She is the author of The Factory, which is a book that I didn't end up loving, but I would like to give her another go. It's translated from the Japanese by David Boyd. I won't read the whole blurb, but the very top says, 2 friends meet across 3 dinners. That's it. Then we've got a short story collection by Youngson, which is called The 6 Who Came to Dinner. One of these short stories is about a dinner party that goes disastrously wrong, but all of these stories, I believe, are set within one community and are set within different houses. Obviously, I will report back as I read it and tell you whether or not that is correct, but it's set in a village. And then finally, we have this, which is You Are Eating an Orange, You Are Naked by Sheung-King. This is about a translator who leaves his home in Toronto and travels to lots of different places, and then his partner comes to stay with him on his travels, and they eat and they share folk stories. So those are the 4 that I'm going to be reading in this video. I will talk to you about them. I will report back. I will take you on walks, and we can cook some things, probably. I made my annual Christmas wrapping paper yesterday, which I was going to vlog, but I just wanted to get on with it. So I will show you a cutaway here. I did film it last year, and to be honest, I don't think anyone needs a tutorial on it because it's just me cutting up some potatoes and using paint like a 5-year-old, and I think we all know how to do that. But I just really love doing this every year, so I did that yesterday. Today I think I'm going to go through a box where I have been putting things throughout the year that I have bought with people in mind, and go through that and just evaluate how the Christmas gift stuff is looking and what other things I may need to purchase. My Christmas cards also arrived in the post day, or at least some of them, because I've got various different ones, and they really made me grin. I was going to hold them up and show you, but I left them upstairs, so I will put some pictures here. I don't know why this black cat delights me as much as it does, but it does. It just makes me giggle. I will link the designer in the description box down below. But I will leave you right now, and I'll come back to you when I have read things and have things to say. I will leave you with this little clip of a squirrel that I saw at the weekend who just delighted me. It's not the best footage in the world, but it was such a hard-working little guy, and the little jumps are just chef's kiss. So enjoy 30 seconds of that, and I'll come back to you and speak to you in a bit. And this video is very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, so I've read the first story in The 6 Who Came to Dinner by Youngson, and I am undecided. I'm undecided. The first bit of the story I felt quite perplexed by. So it is a dinner party. Lots of members of this community have been invited to this woman's house, and she presents them with an idea. She says, what I think we should all do is tell one story to the group, and no one is allowed to respond with their own story, because I hate that about dinner parties, where you want to tell another person about something in your life and they're not listening to you because they're just thinking about what they want to respond with. And there is a funny bit there where one of the characters goes, I know what you mean, that happened to me this one time, and they then go off on a tangent highlighting her point. I enjoyed that, but I couldn't work out where this was going, because the host starts on this meandering story about a stormy night where someone is struggling to get from point A to point B, and then as she continues you realise that she's implicating every other person at the dinner party. In this story they all had some role to play. It's kind of like a Good Samaritan type story, and everyone who's at this dinner party has let the main person in the story she's telling down with disastrous consequences. but it took quite a while to get to that point. It felt like I was walking through that snowstorm myself. Actually, this is not a snowstorm, it's just a rainstorm. I'm imagining it as snow because it's better for this imagery. It felt like I was walking through a snowstorm in the story thinking, where are we going? Where is this headed? And it wasn't always a pleasant confusion where I felt as though I was supposed to be, you know, in the dark. Especially at the beginning of the story, it just felt like there were a few too many elements overcomplicating things and lessening my overall enjoyment. I liked where the story went in the end, but I just didn't enjoy, on the whole, how it got there. But maybe the next story in the book I will enjoy more. I think I'm going to put this down and head to one of the other books and then come back to it in this video. But briefly, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video is very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers. You can see one of their lights in the background there because they make lights, they make brilliant lights, and I have thoroughly enjoyed working with them for over a year now. So if you've been on this channel for a while, then you know how much I love them. So let me very briefly remind you. So Serious Readers create the best reading lights, and they got in touch with me last autumn asking if they could send me one of their high definition lights, which is a floor lamp. I will insert some footage of that here because it's currently downstairs. It sits next to the sofa, but sometimes I bring it up to my office. Mine is corded, but you can get it wireless as well. Basically, it's the best reading light that I have ever used. They reached out to me because they know that I have an eye condition. I have the precursor to limbal stem cell deficiency. You obviously don't need a disability relating to your eyes to benefit from having a good reading light, but I'm just talking about my personal experience. I know that the founder of Serious Readers invented this series of reading lights when his mother was losing her eyesight. So they are done to a very high spec. They are amazing. They've invented this thing called daylight wavelength technology, which means that all of their Serious lights mimic daylight as much as possible, which doesn't correct any issue that you have with your eye. It just makes the best reading environment for your eyes. I just love them so much, and when I'm reading without it, especially at the moment when it gets dark really early, as I mentioned in a video a couple of weeks ago, when we went on holiday to the New Forest for a week, I didn't take the light with me and I noticed a huge difference. So Serious Readers have offered me a code and a link, which I'll put in the description box down below. But essentially, if you use the code JEN22 when purchasing any of their Serious lights, you will get a free compact light, which is what is sitting on my bedside table. This one is different. It doesn't have the daylight wavelength technology, but it is amazing as a bedside reading lamp. You will get a free one of those with that code, which retails at £150, and it's also free international delivery as well. So if you would like to check them out, there is a link in the description box down below. They're just a really lovely company as well, and as I've mentioned before, their lights are in submarines and in spaceships, so you know that they're really good. So thank you very much to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video, and I'm going to come back to you maybe when I've read more, or maybe when I'm baking. Good morning. I have just rolled out of bed. I've been lying awake in bed for ages and I thought, no, I should get up. It is nearly 6 in the morning. I have a hospital appointment today that I'm not looking forward to, so I have not slept very well. But that is a common occurrence recently. So anyway, I thought I would get up and I would do something. And I thought what I would do is I would make macarons, because I thought, as I was lying in bed, wouldn't it be cool to make macarons that are like double macarons, so like a small one joined to a large one, and make snowman macarons? So I'm going to do a trial of that right now, because if it works, I might like to make some for one of my doctors for Christmas, because I am that patient. So I'm going to do that right now. Let's do it. Let's do it. those macarons worked out really well, and I think I will make them again. I will leave a link to, I think it's Sally's Baking Addiction. That's the base recipe for the macarons, and I just changed the shape. And then in those particular ones, I did a Nutella buttercream, but I think my favorite is a caramel buttercream, and I just kind of made that up, but I'm sure that if you Google those things, there will be a million recipes for you to choose from. We have stumbled on a book. So I started reading Dinner Party by Sarah Gilmartin. This is an Irish novel, and I really enjoyed the beginning of it. It's about a woman called Kate who's coming back from the shops. She's carrying lots of food. She is thinking very precisely about what she's going to cook for her siblings who are coming round for dinner. It's the anniversary of her twin sister's death, which is Halloween. And for some reason, her mother isn't coming. It's intriguing as to maybe why her mother may not want to be there. We get a hint that maybe her mother is very controlling. And I'm feeling that maybe she blamed Kate for the death of her twin sister, who she seemed to favour, whether that's all in Kate's head or something that her mother actually did. We didn't know at the very beginning of the book. I'm sorry if you can hear house renovation stuff going on. It's not our house, it's further down the road. But it's one of those sounds that I think maybe won't be picked up on the camera. I have my fingers crossed. So I really liked that beginning part and the dinner party scene that followed. That's what I want from a dinner party themed book. And I was enjoying it. There was stuff to do with eating disorders that I wasn't fully on board with. I'm not quite sure why. I need to think about that a little bit more. But then it jumped back in time to when Kate is 13, and we then spend a lot of time with her and her family. And it's at that point, or rather into that section, that the book just lost me. It's not as if the book is bad. I don't think that it's a bad book, but it kind of faded into the sea of other family saga novels that I have read in the past. And it's just one of those books, I don't know if you ever feel like this with a book, where you think, I can appreciate this and I could keep reading it and I could reach the end of it, but I have a very strong feeling that it will just be an okay book. It's not going to change my life. I'm not going to get a whole lot of stuff out of it, and there are other books that I would prefer to be reading. Some of you may disagree with that strategy, but I am all for DNFing books if they're not gelling with you anymore. Give them a decent chance and all of that stuff, but life is too short and there are lots of amazing books out there, and an amazing book will be a different book to every individual out there. And I would say that if you enjoy Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason and Green Road by Anne Enright, both of which are generally agreed very brilliant books, but just books that I didn't particularly love, I think that you could love this. So I'm not criticizing the book itself, I'm just saying that it's not for me, it's not my cup of tea. I didn't particularly care about the family that I was reading about. For me personally, because I've read a lot of family sagas, it felt as though it was just, as I said, fading into the background of other books. And maybe if I'd read this before those other books, I would enjoy it more, which I always think is an interesting thing to think about. So I'm going to part ways with this one. I'm not sure who I'm going to pass it on to. Someone. I will think about it, or maybe one of my neighbours. Sometimes I put a box of books outside our house and then text the street WhatsApp group and say, there are books outside the house, and they seem to go. So I'm glad that people like them. So it would definitely go to a home where it can be enjoyed elsewhere. All right, on to the next book. Hi, it is the evening. I'm holding you in my hand, so I'm sorry if it's a bit jumpy. I'm seeing Sana tomorrow for a walk, and I thought I would make us some lunch for tomorrow. So I've decided to make the roast pork buns from Pippa Eats book. I will insert the cover here, but instead of using pork, I'm using jackfruit. And I will also insert a cutaway here so you can see the jackfruit, and it's looking really good. I have made the dough. Here is the dough, and now let's make the buns. Fingers crossed this turns out good. Those dumplings worked out really well. So I made some for Mr. M and I last night, and then I got up really early this morning and made some fresh ones that I can take for my walk with Sana today. I'm going to see her in St Albans, which is now where she lives, which is an 18-minute train ride from King's Cross, so it's super close. And Mr. M and I, fun fact, were thinking of moving to St Albans when we were looking to move before we moved here. There were just a couple of places that we were considering going to, and that's a commuter town that, as I said, is not that far away. But in the end, we didn't end up moving there. But it's going to be nice to go for a walk around there. I'm sure it's going to be quite Christmassy, and it's always obviously lovely to see her. So before I go, I need to get ready, put some makeup on, throw a wig on because I fancy wearing one today. Plus side of wearing a wig in winter is that it helps to keep your head warm at the same time, which when you have alopecia, even if you're wearing a hat, the wind on the bald patches, it's cold, so a wig helps. So I'm going to be wearing a wig today. But let me talk to you about this first, which is Weasels in the Attic by Hiroko Oyamada, translated from the Japanese by David Boyd. I mentioned in the first clip that I was wary of this book because I had been excited about it, but then I read The Factory and I was so bored by that book, which is by the same author. So I was thinking, oh no, maybe this one is not going to be one for me either. But actually, I really enjoyed this book. I was a little bit tentative because I feel this book takes a while to get into its stride, which is a strange thing to say about a book that's only 70 pages long because there's not much room to get comfy before it's over. But This book is split into 3 sections. We follow the same narrator in those 3 sections, and we do see a growth in his character. In the first story, he gets a call from a friend who says that a friend of his has just died, and they end up talking about it on this phone call, and the narrator remembers the one time when he met this friend of his friend, and how he didn't really like him because he didn't talk to his wife in a very respectful way, and he was very boastful of the fact that she was only 20 and they'd just had a baby together, and he also bred tropical fish. And the narrator reflects on how he and his wife are struggling to conceive, and there's a lot of imagery in this book about animals reproducing and that seeming really easy, but at the same time the narrator sometimes fixates on these fish reproducing in a way that isn't, in air quotes, wanted. He has these nightmares about fish reproducing into what he calls mutant fish, and I was very worried that this was going to turn into a book that presented having a disabled child as a horror. And we know that if the book had done that, I would have said no thank you and goodbye. But I think actually the book manages to explore that fear and the anxiety and the overwhelm of worrying why your body isn't producing a child, and what could be going, in air quotes, wrong in your own body to stop you having something that you see other people enjoying. So there's definitely a claustrophobic feel to this book. It feels like the narrator is in a tank, more so actually that his wife is. He acknowledges what they are going through, but he isn't feeling it in the same way that she is, and she's very frustrated by that. I don't want to say too much more about this book because it is so short. It is only 70 pages. Each section does follow some form of sitting down and having a meal. One of the stories is set in snow, which means it would be good for reading it at this time of year. I don't think that it's a perfect book. I think that sometimes the imagery, the extended metaphors really work and lend themselves to the themes that run throughout the entire text, and sometimes I think the book almost steps outside itself a bit and tries something a bit different, and the payoff isn't always there. But I liked what it was trying to do for the most part, and I'm so pleasantly surprised given I haven't enjoyed her work in the past. So I feel like at some point I will have to try a 3rd book by her and see if I'm more likely to enjoy her than not. Maybe the not enjoying was a fluke, or maybe this one was a fluke. I do not know. But anyway, I enjoyed it. I need to get ready now and head off to St Albans, so I will insert some footage of that here. How adorable were those knitted postbox. I love it when communities do stuff like that. It just fills my heart with warmth. It was rather chilly but really lovely to be walking around St Albans and to see Sana. It was just very nice. And now I'm here to talk to you about the next book, which is You Are Eating an Orange, You Are Naked. And what I've realised actually, the title of this book, these 2 sentences, they are repeated throughout this book at the beginning of most paragraphs. Not these particular words, but 2 sentences that just state something very matter of fact about the scene you're about to read. For instance, it is 8 in the evening, the sky is still bright, your body is warm, this is comfortable. And there's something kind of reassuring about that repeated syntax. I liked that. So this is about a translator who travels around the world, and his partner is sometimes with him, and occasionally when they are sitting down and having dinner, he will tell her about stories he has read or heard, and sometimes she will respond with stories that she has read or heard. Sometimes it's written in dialogue, and then occasionally we will get dialogue from films that he's watching as well that he will then comment on. He will comment on how realistic or not realistic the dialogue in the film is, and that's kind of fun to then read alongside dialogue that he has reconstructed from his interactions with his partner. Essentially, this book seems to be about the translation process, not just the translation of books and the gaps within that, but the translation of stories, of inheriting other people's stories or trying to see your life through other people's stories. So this translator is stuck in transcribing and in effect promoting thinking about other people's tales at the expense of his own, so much so that he seems to have forgotten what it's like to live. Everything seems to be in slightly less colour to him because he's so fixated on the vibrant, cut down versions. I'm sure that you can hear that house renovation noise from down the road, so let's move into the other room. Okay, let's try sitting here. So what I was saying is that he's become so used to and obsessed with focusing on the vibrant, cut down, fictional versions of people's lives that he's been reading about in books and in films and translating, that he's almost not really fed up with his life, but a bit perplexed by his life, why it's so full of filler, and therefore he feels the need to fill silences over dinner with all of these more interesting tales and anecdotes. It's one of those books that I really loved thinking about as I was reading it, but maybe didn't enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed analysing what it was doing, if that makes sense. One of those books where, as I've mentioned before with other texts, I would quite like to write an essay on it and study it and talk about it with other people, but it's not as if it's you might be able to hear children outside. It's a toss-up between listening to kids play outside and listening to drilling noises. I choose children playing because it's a happy noise. So it's not necessarily a book that I would recommend reading because the plot is so compelling or anything, but the themes and the discussions are really interesting. I think that you would get more enjoyment out of it if you'd read quite a lot of translated fiction. It does reference a lot of quite famous books, so it talks about Hong Kong's The Vegetarian and the success of that, and bemoaning how if a writer like Hong Kong makes it in, say, the UK or the US and wins some prizes, they dub her as a new voice when actually she's been, writing books in Korean for a very long time. I think The Vegetarian was maybe her 10th book or something. So it's sensationalized because she's new to this particular audience, but then it erases the rest of her career that doesn't suit the narrative of, oh my God, we've just discovered this new writer. It is rightly criticising the way that some translation marketing works. It is criticising the English-speaking world for thinking that their language is superior to everybody else's. It talks about Roland Barthes' A Lover's Discourse, and by association touches on Zhao Lugu's book of the same name. It also talks about Lost in Translation and why the translator in this book does not enjoy that film because of the way that it is framed. I appreciated it a lot, and something I'm going to be thinking about is whether or not the main character's partner was written in such what I felt to be an unrealistic way on purpose. Whether the narrator had kind of lost touch with his real life so much that he couldn't write about someone in his life in a believable way anymore, or if that was supposed to be believable and then the book fell down on that front. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't alter my enjoyment of the book, and I guess authorial intent is not relevant when it comes to reviews, at least in this case. It's one of those books I think that also will just grow the more I think about it. I'm going to come up with a really naff image, but do you remember those flannels you used to be able to buy from the Disney shop that were all packaged and really tight, and you would put them in water and then they would just expand? I feel like that book has done that to my brain, you know. Yeah, lots to like about this book. Not a favourite, but definitely lots to like. Hi folks, so we have reached the end of the video and we've had a 50-50 success rate. So I've decided not to continue with the 6 Who Came to Dinner. I read half of the next short story and it's just, I think, let me pinpoint what it is I don't enjoy about the way that this has been written. I think there are too many characters, as I mentioned in the first story. And I know that I might sound like a contradiction because I do enjoy crime novels with quite a few characters, especially, as I said, when it's a dinner party. But this is too many characters where it's bombarding you with loads of information about their lives that you then have to remember. And you're trying to work out what information you should be retaining and what information you can happily let go of. And that doesn't become a fun part of the story. It becomes a really frustrating part of the story. It also feels as though these stories could be tighter. They definitely ramble for quite a long time. I would recommend this for fans of Agatha Christie. I think it has that old school crime feel about it. And I like that sometimes, but I just don't like it here. So this one is just a case of it's not for me. And then there was obviously the dinner party, which I didn't end up enjoying either. Again, just a matter of personal taste when it comes to writing style and content. And then the two ones that I enjoyed the most were these two here, which were You Are Eating an Orange, You Are Naked by Sheung-King and also Weasels in the Attic by Hiroko Oyamada. What's kind of weird is that this is the one, Weasels in the Attic, that I enjoyed the most, but thought I would enjoy the least. And then the 6 Who Came to Dinner was the one I was most excited about and ended up being the one that I didn't like very much in the end. So that's just to say, it's very difficult sometimes to predict what you're going to enjoy, even when it comes to reading books that centre on your favourite themes. It's not going to stop me seeking out books about dinner parties. They are still a favourite thing that I like to read about. I would love to know if you have read any of these 4 books or if you are tempted to pick any of them up. I have another one of these planned where I'm trying to find a book that is maybe similar in tone to Notes on a Scandal by Zoe Heller, which is one of my favourite books, and I have 2 books on my shelves that I think would fit that. So we can do that at some point in the future. But next week I will be here with my most anticipated books of 2023. The week after that, on Christmas Day, I will be with you for a reading vlog as well. I completely understand why people don't upload around Christmas time because everyone is, well, most people are busy with families and stuff, but I selfishly wish more people uploaded at that time of the year if they felt like they wanted to, because I've definitely been in the position of wanting to kind of cocoon myself in cozy reading content. So if anybody who feels like they might also need that at this time of year, I am planning to have a reading vlog going up on Christmas Day. And if you are going to be busy on Christmas Day, which I imagine many of you will be, that'll be there for you later. So thank you for joining me for this video. Thank you also to Serious Readers for sponsoring it. Please check out the link in the description box down below. They are a fabulous company. As I've mentioned before, I'm currently doing Vlogmas over on Patreon. If that is something you're interested in, I'm uploading a bookish video every weekday on the run up to Christmas, and that tier is $2 or £2 for the entire month. Link is in the description down below. If you're new to my channel and you enjoyed this and you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely, and I will see you all for another video very soon. Bye.